Welcome, beloved listeners, to Nyle and Moon's Intimacy series, where we explore the exquisite landscape of connection between you and your partner. I'm here as your trusted friend, your guide, your fellow traveler on this beautiful journey. Today, we're diving into a topic that often feels like a disruption, a barrier, a wedge between us. But what if it could be something else entirely? What if the very moments of disagreement, those uncomfortable clashes of perspective, were actually potent invitations to a deeper, more profound understanding of each other? Could conflict, in its raw, unvarnished form, actually be a secret pathway to greater intimacy, a way to weave your lives even more tightly together rather than pulling them apart? That's our bold question today. Let's uncover the delicate art of turning friction into a deeper, more sensual connection. Imagine this for a moment. You're sitting across from your partner, perhaps at the kitchen table after a long day. The soft light of dusk is filtering through the window, painting gentle shadows on the wall. You were just sharing stories about your day, a comfortable rhythm of conversation, maybe a hand resting lightly on your partner's arm. Then, a seemingly small comment, an offhand remark about plans for the weekend, or a difference in opinion on a shared responsibility shifts the air. The easy flow seems to catch, to snag on something unseen. A subtle tension begins to build. Your partner's voice, which moments ago was warm and resonant, now carries a different edge, a slight sharpness you hadn't noticed before. Your own shoulders, which were relaxed, now feel a little tighter, a little higher. You might feel a prickle of defensiveness, a small knot forming in your stomach. The warmth in the room seems to recede, replaced by a cool, quiet distance. Perhaps you catch a glance, a look that feels less like understanding and more like a subtle judgment or a frustration you can almost taste in the air. The words exchanged become less about the content itself and more about the underlying current of emotion. One of you might withdraw slightly, pulling your hand back, a subtle shift in posture. The other might lean in, trying to bridge the gap with more words, perhaps escalating the intensity unknowingly. The comfortable silence that was there before is now replaced by a heavy, almost suffocating quiet, or a rapid-fire exchange that feels like a tennis match where no one is scoring, only serving. This isn't a shouting match, not yet anyway. It's that familiar, insidious creep of misunderstanding. The moment when two hearts, so close just moments ago, begin to feel miles apart. It's in these moments, these delicate fractures, that we often feel most vulnerable, most exposed. The intimacy you felt earlier seems to evaporate, leaving a hollow ache. It's a familiar scenario for so many couples, isn't it? A common dance, a pattern that can feel impossible to break. But what if we could learn to see this dance, this conflict, not as a sign of failure, but as a crucial, perhaps even beautiful opportunity? Let's begin by shifting our perspective on what conflict actually is. Often, we perceive it as a problem, a breakdown, something to be avoided at all costs. But what if we started to view conflict as information, as a signal, a whisper from the deeper parts of ourselves and our partner, indicating that something needs attention? Think of it this way: a smoke alarm isn't the fire itself, it's a signal. And in our relationships, conflict often serves a similar purpose. It's not necessarily a sign of a failing relationship, but rather a sign that there's an unmet need, an unexpressed desire, a misunderstanding yearning to be understood. One of the most profound insights we can gain is recognizing that behind almost every complaint or criticism lies a deeper, often unspoken, wish or longing. Dr. John Gottman, whose extensive research with couples at the University of Washington has illuminated so much about relationship dynamics, calls these bids for connection. A bid for connection is any attempt to get attention, affirmation, affection, or any other positive connection from a partner. Sometimes these bids are direct and clear, like, "Could you please hold my hand?" Other times, especially when we're feeling vulnerable or stressed, they can be disguised as complaints, criticisms, or even seemingly aggressive statements. For example, your partner might say, rather sharply, "You never help with the dishes." On the surface, that sounds like an accusation, but if you listen deeper, past the sharp tone, it might actually be a disguised bid for help, for teamwork, for appreciation, for a feeling of being seen and supported. It could be a longing for partnership expressed imperfectly because of fatigue or frustration. The true message might be, "I feel overwhelmed and I long for your support and recognition of my efforts." When we learn to hear past the surface level complaint and tune into that underlying longing, the entire dynamic of the conflict can shift. It's a fundamental reframe. Instead of reacting to the criticism, you can respond to the underlying desire for connection. Consider the role of our individual histories and attachment styles in these moments of conflict. Dr. John Bowlby, a pioneer in attachment theory, described how our early experiences with caregivers shape our expectations and behaviors in adult relationships. If you have an anxious attachment style, you might tend to pursue your partner more intensely during conflict, fearing abandonment. You might interpret a pause or a moment of withdrawal as rejection, escalating your attempts to reconnect, sometimes in ways that feel overwhelming to your partner. On the other hand, if you have an avoidant attachment style, you might feel a strong urge to pull away during conflict, to create space, to internally process, perhaps feeling suffocated by intensity. You might interpret your partner's pursuit as demanding or intrusive. Neither response is inherently right or wrong, but they often clash, creating a difficult cycle. Imagine a microstory. Sarah, who leans anxious, gets upset when her partner, Mark, who leans avoidant, gets quiet during an argument. Sarah might say, "Why are you shutting down? Don't you care?" What she's really saying, deep down, is, "I need reassurance you're still here, that we're okay." Mark, feeling overwhelmed by Sarah's intensity, might retreat further, thinking, "I need to calm down before I can talk rationally." What he's really saying is, "I need space to regulate my own emotions so I can be present for you." Their communication styles, rooted in their attachment patterns, create a painful dance of pursuit and withdrawal. Understanding these underlying patterns, both in yourself and your partner, gives you a tremendous amount of compassion and insight. It allows you to see that your partner isn't intentionally trying to hurt you, but rather reacting from a deeply ingrained blueprint for connection and safety. This leads us to a crucial point: the importance of expressing your own needs and desires clearly, directly, and vulnerably. When you find yourself feeling frustrated or hurt, instead of saying, "You always do X," try to articulate your own feeling and the desire beneath it. For instance, instead of, "You never listen to me," you might say, "When you interrupt me, I feel unheard, and it makes me long for a moment where I can fully express myself without interruption." This shift from accusation to vulnerable expression is profoundly powerful. It disarms defensiveness and invites empathy. It transforms a potential attack into an invitation for understanding. Think about the subtle ways we communicate our distress: a sigh, a roll of the eyes, a tense jaw. These are all signals. They are bids, albeit often negative ones. The challenge, and the opportunity, is to learn to decode these signals, both in ourselves and in our partners. What is the true message behind the irritable tone? What is the unspoken plea behind the sudden silence? This kind of deep listening, this commitment to understanding the hidden landscape of your partner's emotional world, is a cornerstone of true intimacy. It's a practice of moving beyond the superficial words and into the deeper currents of feeling and need. It requires courage because it means looking past your own immediate hurt or frustration to genuinely seek out your partner's experience. It's about recognizing that beneath the surface of any disagreement, there is often a shared desire for closeness, for understanding, for love. When we approach conflict with this lens, it ceases to be a battle to be won and transforms into a mystery to be explored together, a puzzle whose solution brings you closer rather than pushing you apart. Take a moment now, if you can, to just breathe. Let those thoughts about the deeper reasons behind conflict settle in. It's a lot to consider, isn't it? To think that those moments of discomfort, those sharp words or heavy silences, are actually trying to tell us something vital. It takes practice, this kind of introspection and outward empathy. It takes a conscious effort to pause and look beneath the surface. But the rewards, the profound understanding and connection that can emerge, are immeasurable. Now, let's delve into the second core teaching, which is about shifting from that initial, often defensive reaction to a place of curious and engaged presence. When conflict arises, our bodies and minds often react in predictable, primal ways. We're wired for self-preservation, and that includes protecting our emotional selves. Dr. Daniel Goleman, in his work on emotional intelligence, describes what's often called an amygdala hijack. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped part of our brain, is responsible for processing emotions, especially fear and anger. When we perceive a threat, even an emotional one during a disagreement, the amygdala can essentially take over, bypassing the more rational, thoughtful parts of our brain. This leads to the familiar fight, flight, or freeze response. We might feel a surge of adrenaline, our heart rate increases, our muscles tense. In this state, our capacity for empathy, for clear communication, for thoughtful problem solving significantly diminishes. We become reactive, defensive, and often say or do things we later regret. It's a protective mechanism, yes, but one that often sabotages our efforts to connect with our partners. Recognizing when you or your partner are in this state is incredibly important. You can often see it in body language, the tightening of the jaw, folded arms, a glazed look in the eyes, or an elevated tone of voice. The first crucial step in shifting this dynamic is to cultivate the power of a conscious pause. This isn't about avoiding the issue, quite the opposite. It's about creating a deliberate, intentional break to allow your nervous system to calm down, to let the amygdala release its grip, and to bring your rational mind back online. Dr. Gottman's research suggests that when a conversation begins to feel flooded, meaning one or both partners are overwhelmed emotionally, taking a 20-minute break can significantly improve the outcome of the discussion. This isn't about walking away in anger or using the pause as a punishment. It's about a mutual agreement to step back, to self-regulate, and to return to the conversation from a place of greater calm and clarity. This pause can look different for everyone. It might be saying, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Can we take a 30-minute break and revisit this?" Or it could be a prearranged signal, a word or a gesture that says, "I need to step away for a moment to collect myself." During this pause, it's essential to engage in self-soothing activities. This isn't the time to ruminate on the argument or rehearse your next defensive statement. Instead, focus on things that genuinely calm your body and mind. This could be taking a walk, listening to soothing music, engaging in deep breathing exercises, or even just focusing on a simple sensory experience, like the feeling of warm tea in your hands. The goal is to lower your physiological arousal so you can return to the conversation as your best self, not your reactive self. Once you've both had a chance to regulate your emotions, the next step is to engage with active, empathetic listening. This is where the magic truly happens. It means listening not just to the words your partner is speaking, but to the feelings behind those words, to the unspoken needs and desires. It means giving your partner your full, undivided attention, putting aside your own agenda for a moment, and truly trying to understand their perspective. Dr. Carl Rogers, a pioneer in humanistic psychology, emphasized the importance of what he called unconditional positive regard and empathic understanding. This means trying to see the world from your partner's shoes, to feel what they're feeling without judgment. A powerful technique for empathetic listening is reflective listening. This involves paraphrasing what you've heard your partner say, not to agree with them necessarily, but to ensure you've understood. You might start with phrases like, "What I hear you saying is that you're feeling frustrated because you feel unseen in your efforts." Or, it sounds like you're feeling a sense of disappointment about our plans. Is that right? When you reflect back what you hear, your partner feels truly heard and understood. This validation is incredibly powerful. It de-escalates tension and creates a bridge of connection, even if you don't fully agree with their point of view. You don't have to agree to understand. You don't have to agree to validate their feelings. Think of another micro story. John comes home, visibly upset, and snaps at Lisa. "This house is a mess. I can't believe you haven't cleaned up anything." Lisa's initial reaction might be to get defensive, to point out her own busy day, or to retaliate with her own complaints. But instead, remembering the power of the pause and empathetic listening, she takes a deep breath. She might say, "It sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed by the state of the house, and maybe a little frustrated. Is that what's going on for you?" John, instead of being met with defensiveness, is met with understanding. This small shift can open up a different conversation. He might then say, "Yes, I just had a really tough day at work, and coming home to this makes me feel even more stressed. I was really hoping for a peaceful evening." Now, Lisa has a deeper understanding of his emotional state and his underlying need for peace and calm, rather than just reacting to the surface-level complaint about the mess. This understanding creates an opportunity for connection, for empathy, and for collaboratively finding a solution, rather than spiraling into a wider argument. So, we've explored how conflict often signals deeper, unmet needs and unexpressed desires, acting as a masked bid for connection. And we've also delved into the critical importance of stepping back from our primal, reactive responses, choosing instead to engage with curious, empathetic presence. These two core teachings, understanding the why and then engaging with a regulated open heart, are not separate ideas, but rather two sides of the same beautiful coin. They work in tandem, creating a powerful synergy that can transform the very nature of your disagreements. When you understand that your partner's frustration might be a yearning for appreciation, and you meet that yearning not with defensiveness, but with a calm, curious question, you're doing more than just resolving an argument. You're deepening your intimate bond. You're communicating to your partner, "I see you, I hear you, I care about what's happening beneath the surface for you." This level of understanding and validation is the bedrock of true intimacy. It creates a space where both partners feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to express their true feelings and needs without fear of judgment or attack. It transforms the potentially destructive force of conflict into a constructive energy, an opportunity to learn more about each other, to expand your shared emotional landscape, and to grow closer in ways you might not have thought possible. It's about moving from a place of me versus you to a place of us versus the problem. This shift is not always easy, but it is always worth it. It's a journey of continuous practice, a commitment to choosing connection over being right. So, how do we put these insights into practice in the heat of the moment? Let's break it down into some actionable steps you can try in your own relationship. The first practical step is to recognize the signal and identify the hidden need. When you feel that familiar tension rising or hear a sharp tone from your partner, pause. Instead of immediately reacting with your own defensiveness or counterargument, ask yourself, what is this really about? What might be the unspoken need or desire beneath this complaint? And then, when it feels appropriate and safe, gently invite your partner to explore that with you. You might say, "I'm hearing your frustration about the dishes. Could you tell me more about what's really going on for you right now?" Or, "It sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed. What is it you're longing for in this moment?" This simple inquiry shifts the focus from the surface level issue to the deeper emotional landscape. It shows you're not just hearing the words, but listening for the heart of the matter. It takes courage to ask these questions, but they are profoundly powerful. They invite your partner to move from accusation to vulnerability. The second step is to take a conscious pause for self-regulation. As we discussed, when emotions run high, our rational brains take a back seat. So, when you feel that emotional flooding, that surge of anger or fear or overwhelming sadness, call a timeout. This is not walking away from the problem, but stepping away from the emotional intensity to regroup. Agree with your partner beforehand on a phrase or a gesture that signals, "I need a break." It could be as simple as, "Let's pause this for 20 minutes," or "I need to take a walk around the block and then we can talk." During this pause, deliberately engage in activities that calm your nervous system. Deep breathing, gentle movement, listening to quiet music, or even just sitting in silence for a few moments. The goal is to return to the conversation when you feel more grounded, more centered, and better able to engage constructively. This practice prevents the escalation of conflict and allows for a more thoughtful, compassionate return. The third step is to engage with curiosity, not accusation, using I statements and reflective listening. Once you've both regulated, approach the conversation not with the goal of winning, but with the genuine desire to understand. Begin your expressions with I statements, focusing on your own feelings and experiences rather than making accusations. For example, instead of "you never listen to me," try "I feel unheard when I'm trying to explain something and I'm interrupted." Then, practice reflective listening. After your partner shares, paraphrase what you heard them say, focusing on both their words and their underlying emotions. "What I'm hearing is that you're feeling really stressed about work, and that makes you feel a need for more quiet time when you get home. Is that right?" This simple act of reflecting back helps your partner feel truly seen and understood, which is incredibly validating and helps to de-escalate any lingering tension. The fourth and final step is to co-create a solution or understanding. Once both partners feel heard and understood, you can move towards finding a path forward. This isn't about one person being right and the other being wrong. It's about exploring solutions together that honor both of your needs and desires. Brainstorm options, be open to compromise, and remember that sometimes the solution isn't about fixing a problem, but simply about achieving a deeper understanding of each other's experiences. You might say, "Given what we've both shared, how can we approach this differently next time?" Or, "What's one small step we can take to address this feeling for both of us?" This collaborative approach reinforces your partnership and strengthens your bond, turning a moment of friction into an act of shared creation. So, as we bring our time together to a close today, I invite you to revisit that initial question. Could conflict truly be a pathway to deeper intimacy? I believe with all my heart that it can. It's not about wishing away disagreements, because they are an inevitable and often valuable part of any close relationship. Instead, it's about transforming our relationship with conflict itself. It's about learning to see those moments of friction not as failures, but as precious opportunities, as invitations from your partner's deepest self to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, and to be loved more completely. Imagine the profound sense of connection that blossoms when you navigate a disagreement not by shutting down or fighting, but by opening up with curiosity and compassion. The vulnerability required to express your true needs and the generosity required to truly hear your partners weaves an intricate and resilient tapestry of intimacy. This isn't just about resolving an issue, it's about building a deeper foundation of trust, respect, and profound emotional connection. It's a practice, not a perfect state. There will be times when you fall back into old patterns, when emotions get the better of you, and that's okay. Offer yourself and your partner grace and gently guide yourselves back to these practices. Each attempt, each moment of conscious engagement is a step closer to a more vibrant, more deeply connected, and more sensual relationship. This has been Nyle and Moon's Intimacy series, where we explore the beautiful and sometimes challenging terrain of connection. Thank you for joining me today on this exploration of conflict as connection. Remember, you can find more resources and continue this conversation on our website, nyleandmoon.com. We are so grateful for your presence, and we hope these insights bring you closer to the profound intimacy you deserve. Until next time, lean into love, lean into understanding, and lean into the beautiful complexities of your relationship.